can I have a motion for council to move into open session at 9:51? Councillor Rabbits, seconded by Councillor Geisens. All those in favor? And that's carried. Next up, it looks like consent item A. Is that what you want to go to? Okay. So consent item A is, I have a motion that's been moved by Councillor Rabbits and seconded by Councillor Taylor that consent item A and the following resolution be adopted, that report CAO 19-25 respecting amendments to the Integrity Commissioner process be received as information or adoption?
The bylaws agenda.
Okay. Councillor Huffman.
Thank you, Mayor Tom. So just to get a clear, so just for information, this report, this consent item.
Through you, Mayor Chop, the bylaws included in the agenda, so the bylaw is for approval. This report is just for information.
Okay, so we still need to go through that, and
Well, nobody pulled it. It's a consent item.
I know,
so-
and I was going to pull it, and I guess I wasn't paying attention at the beginning.
We're on consent now. If you want to pull it, you can pull it.
Well, can I explain why I wanted to pull it?
Sure.
I just wanted to pull it in, not so that we were not just pulling out little pieces of our code of conduct. I would recommend that as a council, we go through the entire code of conduct. So we're all familiar with it. We know every aspect of it, and that we're not just picking it apart. That it would be due diligence to go through the whole entire code of conduct. I would feel more comfortable knowing everything, so that in 4 months from now, we don't have another issue where we want to make a change to the code of conduct.
So I just had a conversation with Mr. Schlang and Mr. Grizel this morning, because I do think there are potentially some other interesting changes that we could make in there as I look to other municipalities that have an informal process that predates or it's preliminary to a formal complaint process. So there's almost a mandated mediation type thing, so that the integrity would sit down with the offending counselor and say, can we come to a resolution with this, an agreement that such and such action won't happen again. I think that's quite creative. I mean, that was in a number of municipalities. I saw that. So what Mr. Schlang, what Mr. Grizel suggested was that Mr. Mascaron himself wanted to make had recommended, I guess, some changes, and we had talked about those at the, when he did his presentation as to indirect pecuniary interest and all that kind of thing, of it coming back again in the fall with those changes that he himself was even suggesting. So if you want to debate the report, otherwise, I think we're going to have to debate it this evening.
I feel strongly that it should be all done at the same time, and that we can tackle that. And I feel that there were some other parts in there. Hang on just a minute. Okay, so we're looking at the bylaw 2019-63, correct? No, sorry, wrong one. 2019-64? Is that correct, Mr. Clerk? Yes, okay. I just want to make sure I'm on the right thing. So anyways, I've put down my notes. So instead of pulling sections, prudent to review the entire code of conduct. And I noticed that there was also a removal of the 5 years piece from the contract for the commissioner, the integrity commissioner. And I also noticed some wording in there.
Councillor Huffman, that's incorrect. The 5 years was not removed.
I don't see it in here.
It's definitely still there. The only you'll see that's in a different font
Okay.
that has been changed.
Okay.
Which bylaw are we doing?
Are you doing the changes to the procedural bylaw or to the integrity commissioner process? Okay, the 5 years for certain is in there. Do you have any further questions with that? Okay. Motion's been moved by Councillor Rabbits and seconded by Councillor Taylor That consent item A and the following resolution be adopted, that report CAO 1925 respecting amendments to the Integrity Commissioner process be received as information. All those in favor? And opposed? Okay, it's carried. Next, we are on to the BIA appointments, and we have an unusual situation where we have had 4 ties, 2 for... Oh, I'm sorry, I had the next. My apologies, sorry, Andy was up next with the procedure bylaw.
Sorry, I gotta dip my own lights. Thank you, Mayor Chop and Council. I'm a geek for this stuff, so I'm going to be really quick. This is a procedural bylaw amendments. I'd like to thank the new council for their desire to try new things and embrace change. My transitions are going very slowly. Seems to have been doing that all day today. I don't know why. The changes are highlighted through A through G, and I'm just going to go through them very quickly for you tonight. The first one, planning, Shannon kind of covered it off very quickly. We're hopefully moving to 3 meetings a month. One of the things that's really interesting about Norfolk County is how much we actually meet, how many meeting hours we have. For a municipality of our size, we meet frequently, and we should be able to switch to a 3 meeting a month schedule. The first meeting would be the Public Hearings Committee, the second would be Council and Committee, as you're used to, and week 3 would be Council. And if we have a requirement for a 4th meeting, that would be our special meeting at the end of the month. Shannon kind of covered the Public Hearings Committee really well earlier today. I don't know why it's doing that. There, it goes. All right, so this is all about beginning to facilitate a dialogue with the community rather than have acrimonious hearings here. So high interest items we will be holding 1 statutory public hearing for earlier in the process, a final staff report with recommendations, then will be brought to CIC. So you got to see kind of how that initial step would work. This is the next step. We need to pass this procedural bylaw change so that we don't have to hold another public hearing on that matter. So this is a fruition of what started earlier today. We're also limiting representations from the public at public hearings to 5 minutes a person. This is important to prevent abuses of our hearing processes, as we are increasingly seeing repetition and filibustering of council. People need to present new, concise information to council to allow you to make informed decisions. It isn't about using up as much time as they possibly can. It goes without saying that we're going to work with anybody who comes forward, be there a deputation or somebody at a public hearing, to make sure that they're aware to present to you written materials in advance if they can't cover it in 5 minutes. We've got the Budget Standing Committee. This is recommendation F. This one is a really good step forward for our budget processes. I always think of the budget as the most important thing that a council does in a given year. This is besides your strategic planning, this is the most important guidance document for staff. So we're moving it to have a standing committee that can really focus, encourage sharing of ideas, dialogue and collaboration. It also introduces a period of sober second thought that we haven't had. This year you approved all the budgets right at a council meeting where you were discussing the budget. Wouldn't you like to have a week to sleep on it and think about what you're approving before you do? And so we're also looking to appoint a chair and vice chair of this committee today. And that's just so that some dialogue can start over the summer about how we're going to do our budget processes. This one I'm really excited about. There are not a lot of municipalities that are actually doing electronic meeting trials. We're talking about starting with the advisory committees. Some other municipalities that do it, Owen Sound does it, but you're limited to only doing 2 or 3 a year, and you have to get the approval of the clerk before. This one's really flexible. We're going to encourage all advisory committees to do it, and we're going to evaluate the outcomes to see if there's any applicability to council. And it's all about just engaging the committees. The TAC committee's been on us for a while about this, Telecommunications Advisory Committee, so I think they're really going to be excited about it. Term of reconsideration. This is one that I've presented to council, different iterations of council 3 times. The good thing is if you approve this recommendation, this is the only time you'll hear me speak about it this term. So, because I can't come back again. It strengthens council's decisions. It avoids repetition and addressing the same matters every year. And we're also limiting deputations to 5 minutes. Less talk, more information. So I did 5-minute deputations in Hamilton for 4 years. Nobody ever complained about it. So we're a municipality of the size where we can do this. We can focus people and get them to be concise. Minor amendments, these are just some smaller ones. The inaugural meeting, I heard a lot of you say it should have started later, not 3 p.m. The process for chairing items, chair adding items to agenda, process for vacating the chair. Other business becomes announcements. That's one I want to really kind of just touch on. Right now, the other business is really just for general information. It says that in the procedural bylaw, but we sometimes get too into it. So what we want to do is just call it announcements, have people really signal to the chair that they want to speak about a specific item, no more going around the circle. Just if you have something, you put your hand up, the chair calls on you. So it should be quicker. And definition of staff permitted in closed session. And the other thing is just we're also proposing a new calendar that is within there. So take a look at the calendar. One of the things with the calendar is we're suggesting that the August 27th council meeting be removed and that we switch August 22nd to a council meeting. If you approve these changes tonight, they will take effect next meeting. So next week when you meet, they'll all be in effect. So there will be a bit of a difference to how your meetings flow. And with that, I'll answer any questions you have.
Councillor Columbus.
Yes, thank you, Andy. So when we're having a public hearing, a planning meeting with respect to applications, it would be 2 weeks before it gets ratified by council? Is that the way I read it? There'd be a 2-week waiting period?
Yeah, and I think Pam might jump in, but my understanding is that what will happen is planning are going to bring forward reports that are more for an informational purpose. So they don't have as well-rounded, they aren't as done now. So they'll bring forward the report a bit sooner, and then it'll be two weeks, or if even the next cycle at CIC where it's approved. And people who want to appear there will have to be a deputation.
Thank you.
Councillor Michelli?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Andy, I'm just kind of throwing this out. This is with regard to the calendar. The new proposed calendar that we have suggests that we have one, and forgive me, I just have to check it. That we will have a CIC meeting during the traditional March break. And I'm just wondering if council would be, possibly concerned about that interfering possibly with someone's family plans for that week. I think for some people during the March break, that's their opportunity to go somewhere or be with family. And I'm just wondering if that would be an inconvenient time for anybody on council. And by the way, I'm not suggesting this for me, but it's a thought that did occur to me. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I agree with my colleague, Councillor Michelli, that there could be a concern for those, especially those that have families, and there's a break from the school, and there's a chance for them to spend some time, and it's sort of a tradition, a convention that we have a March break in Canada, and I'm more concerned about not necessarily myself, but my colleagues and their family, our staff members and their family that have traditions that take place over the course of the March break. It's something that even in my private business life, I know that this is something that's a regular thing that takes place. People are traditionally taking vacations during this time, and businesses are able to plan for and anticipate March break because it's such a regular thing, and that could throw a potential wrench into people's planning around that event. And I think we should maintain a March break because of those comments that I've just made.
Can I offer a solution quickly? How about if for the month of March, we do the first week and then the third and fourth, or however March break happens to work out? Does that work?
Yep.
So it'll just be staggered
Yes, of
slightly
course.
differently that month. Perfect. Problem solved. Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Two very quick questions or comments. One, I read about requesting grants. That is great, streamline that process. However, if it's a service club happening in my ward coming to you, I would just like to be kept apprised of it, if at all possible. Secondly, the reconsideration details, we're still able to have reconsideration motion.
Yeah,
Correct.
so just 2 points. Just with the deputation, one thing that a lot of people don't get is I deny more deputations than I like to, but I never get offended when council or committee overturns that decision, because the reason why I deny is a lot of other municipalities will have the request come before committee or council for approval, and then it'll go forward another 2 weeks later. So it's just a quicker process to have me review. But yeah, there's no problem anytime I'm denying, letting people, the ward councillor know, or if it's a service club, and about grants. Yeah. Yeah, and. The other aspect, yeah, so you can always do notices of motion to reconsider. The only time I get upset is when council tries to reconsider something for the second time. But I've seen that happen in other municipalities. It's just the clerk throws a hissy fit.
Councillor Huffman. Yeah.
Call me Councillor Rabbit, sir. A couple questions. So when going through all of the changes and everything, I agree with all of them wholeheartedly, and I like that Councillor Michelli brought up the March break piece. So just wondering, so public meetings, we don't have anything in there about the number of speakers, correct? That are permitted to speak on a topic at a public meeting?
Through you, Mayor Chop. So the way that it's done, the Public Hearings Committee can establish their own rules. So there is some discretion within it. What I've suggested that we start doing is saying that the public have 5 minutes to speak. And when you've got planners, it's a bit harder to say to a planner that you can only take 5 minutes, but you can still establish a reasonable time frame. And we kind of start off that as a basis point. But if you had 100 people show up here and everybody wants to speak, you could say, in order to make sure everybody gets heard, we're going to do 2 or 3 minutes. The committee can adjust it. There's no hard and fast rule, but since 5 minutes is what our deputation will be if this is approved, it's easy for people to understand.
Yeah, I've just had some feedback from constituents regarding the public meetings and the number of speakers, and feeling that they weren't really encouraged to speak, and so that type of thing. So I just want to make sure that's brought forward. And I noticed that we've got in here in terms of the chair for the CIC, there's the rotation being changed from 4 months to 6 months, correct? I believe that's in there, but there isn't anything in there in terms of how the rotation is determined. I don't know if if that matters. And then I noticed that there's nothing in there in terms of the deputy mayor process as to whether that's an appointment or an election or all of those. Like, are we looking at tidying up all of these things with our streamlining our meetings and our times? And I just want to throw it there too, with following along with our agendas. People are really starting to engage at home online and stuff, like with smart TVs and computers and their phones and stuff. And we're all getting a lot of feedback from people that they're getting very upset. Like they tune in at a certain time to watch a deputation, and it's either over or we're an hour and a half behind. And so we're losing the people that we want to continue to engage. And we are getting more young people who are watching. So whatever we can do, and I know that some of these changes are going to help, like definitely, if we're doing public meetings on one and CIC. But I think we really do need to endeavor for all of us to do a better job at following our agendas.
Through you, Mayor Chop. Yeah, currently we don't have, so the process to date usually for the appointment of CIC chairs has been through the inaugural meeting, where we do all the kind of appointments. So right now, we've got everybody appointed for 6 months, but there's a provision that allows everybody to trade if they so desire. And the deputy mayor role was normally done just by motion, as we did this time at the inaugural. But there is obviously options to firm that up and to do different options with it. Such as the mayor appointing directly would be an option that a lot of municipalities do. In terms of our agendas, yeah, I think one of the things that these standing committees will help with it, having CIC planning, one of the issues we run into is we have deputations on the same day as we have planning, and we have all these staff reports coming to different days. When we focus at CICs just for staff reports and deputations, and planning meetings are just for planning hearings, well, public hearings, you could have drainage hearings and other ones, then hopefully there won't be all the jumping around that we have. We can kind of follow things in order. Hopefully, and if that doesn't work, there's agenda management systems where we can invest $20,000 and we can have a nice system online where people can see the video and it highlights the agenda item that we're on right next to the video online. And that's what a lot of municipalities are doing to kind of get that. But I don't want to spend money or bring forward that option until we try to see how this pilot goes.
Quick comment to make. I'm just not sure us not encouraging people to come forward. I think this council's always been very sort of encouraging for even people out of the...
The night of the cannabis night, many people felt that they were discouraged from speaking.
The night of the cannabis night with the residents?
Mm-hmm.
I thought didn't we have tons and tons and tons speak? Okay, Councillor Van Passen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My only question, I think Councillor Columbus touched on this, the public hearings meeting. Potentially, we could be discussing every one of those applications twice that way if there are going to be recommendations to the council meeting and more deputations can show up and talk about it. And I was thinking more along specifically the planning meetings, that can't we approve them, like, at the end of that meeting, approve them as like we do now with the confirming bylaw, specifically on those, so that those issues, the planning issues are done, not that they're going to be delayed again for another 2 weeks.
Through you, Mayor Chop. So what will happen is it's almost a two-stream process. So the ones that aren't of high interest, I don't like to call them contentious, but the ones that are high interest to the community can have an information report, and then they can come forward to a CIC meeting for approval. But the ones that we expect will go through with limited discussion, maybe half an hour, they'll just come forward as normally. So you'd be approving probably 80% of them still as you normally do at the planning committee. The problem is, well, it's not necessarily a problem, the ratification would take 2 weeks because council wouldn't ratify the bylaw for 2 weeks later. But still, we wouldn't hear from more people. They could submit written correspondence if they wanted to have further comments on those ones.
That would be the chance for any one of the councillors to pull it, to rediscuss it. That would be the chance for anyone to make a deputation concerning it, to try to change their minds. And it might end up, we're trying to save time, and it might end up taking longer because we're doing things twice on some of them.
Through you, Mayor Chop. Well, very similar, like I was in the planning standing committee process in Hamilton, and we didn't hear deputations again at council. When that staff report came forward, we were hard and fast that all we're going to hear from you is correspondence on that. So we won't be hearing from the public again at council, but if there is an information report presented at the planning and then it goes forward to CIC with a staff recommendation, there's a potential that we'd have deputations in those instances.
Perfect. Any further questions? Thanks, Andy. That was a great job. Did you have a motion that I need to move with that? There was no recommendation here, just to be received as information at this point, and then it's approved in the bylaw? There was nothing here. is it not like the other one just received as
just received as
information, and then we'll approve it in the bylaw?
The only thing that, through you, Mayor Schaub, the only thing that we need is we need a chair and vice chair for the budget committee, and we also need to separately approve the calendar with the March change.
Okay. So, Councillor Martin?
I'm riding in on Councillor Taylor's coattails here. I think there is something on page 40, recommendation. And additionally, I would like to appoint Councillor Van Passen as the chair of the Budget Committee.
Okay.
Oh, it's a slider, sorry. I got a
Councillor,
motion right now, though.
is there anybody else that wishes to make an appointment as chair of the Budget Committee? Councillor Rabbits?
I would be very interested in serving as vice chair if I could obtain a nomination.
Councillor Columbus?
I would nominate Ian Rabbits as vice chair.
Councillor Michele? Okay, I'll be honest, I'm going to throw I think we all have the opportunity to speak here. I also would like to be on the Budget Committee in a chair or vice chair position, as being here, working through the summer on the have access to working on the budget while it's going on, and having an MBA from Ivy, I think I have a pretty good handle on things there as well. So I don't know how to sort of work this out from this point, but.
If it assists, so firstly, Councillor Van Passen was appointed as the chair, so if we could vote on that one first. Was that the first?
Councillor Michele?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A question through to Andy. Would it be appropriate for us, maybe before we go to that stage, if we were to ask if either of the current nominees, Councillor Rabbits or Councillor Van Passen, if they were willing to, one of them were willing to pass on their nomination so that the mayor might take one of those positions? Could we do that first, or is that inappropriate? Just asking, and I'm obviously asking those two gentlemen as well.
Okay. Okay, if in that case, I'll step down then if that's. Councillor Michele?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just, with you know, respect to everyone, all members of council, I do think that it would be appropriate and I think beneficial for council to have the mayor be on take one of those positions, just because in the end, she is the one who's going to be taking the responses to our decisions. So I think if she had a bigger hand in it, perhaps it might be a little bit more meaningful when residents have concerns about it. Thank you.
Councillor Martin?
I guess if I explain myself here, my reason for jumping to Councillor Van Passen was because I recall he brought a list of budget that I think had over $2 million in cuts that I found very helpful.
Councillor Van Passen?
And I'm quite confident that Councillor Van Passen could share those in some other way. I think there needs to be a little bit more spreading of the wealth, per se, when it comes to council, to committees and things like that. And I think that, unfortunately, there was already a perception that some of these appointments have already been given to certain individuals. So I would support Mayor Chop and Councillor Rabbits.
Councillor Van Passen?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd be more than happy to take the chair of this new committee. I know I said this back at our orientation session, that I got the lightest load by far of any of the councillors on. I think I only have like score. I got one and the Energy Committee and SCORE. That's my committee duties on behalf of this council. And I said that because there was a lot of people that were interested specifically in certain committees, and I was willing to step back. And I'd be willing to take the chair of this as well because to try to take some of the burden off the mayor rather than put more on her. But I am quite content either which way. If the mayor would like to add this to her list of duties, I'd be more than willing to withdraw my name from the nomination process, and whatever suits the wishes of council, I will be more than happy to agree with them. Thank you.
I think I'd like to weigh in. Thank you, Mayor Choppin, through you, just to maybe provide a rationale as to why I would like to serve in a vice chair role in a supporting capacity. I quite enjoyed our budget deliberations in terms of keeping on the task of focusing on budget items and not digressing into policy discussions. And I felt that I did an adequate job of bringing that skill set to the table. That's one of the reasons why I'd like to serve in that capacity. Having said that, I do serve on quite a number of committees, and if this is in an effort to help share the wealth or help share the burden of the different committees that we do serve on, I can see that point. Councillor Van Passen, and I am currently serving on 7 committees, and we're soon to have a BIA that will be appointed to, in addition to hopefully a working group in due course. And so, with that in mind, I'd be interested in maybe having a point of clarification. Is this appointment for the term of council? Will we have another opportunity to perhaps have this discussion again, maybe not for the 2020 budget, but for 2021 or 2022, where we could have an opportunity to have different chairs for this standing committee? I think that may be a good idea, and I want to know before I rescind my my seat, if that is an option in the future, because I think it would be a good opportunity for us to have that experience in our term of office and have different individuals have an opportunity to do that.
Just speaking with the clerk, and he's saying it's a one-year appointment and that it's been voted on the following year. Councillor Michelle.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a member of council who serves on 11 committees and advisory boards, now that I find out that Councillor Van Passen has a little bit more time on his hands, I would also like to recommend that he become the chair of the Budget Committee. Thank you.
Okay, so do we have a seconder for Councillor Van Passen as the chair then? It was moved by Councillor Martin, and a seconder for Councillor Van Passen. Councillor Rabbits. Okay, all those in favor? And opposed? Okay, and then, so now for, I guess, if we want to take a vote then for the vice chair?
In light of our discussion, I think I will pull my request to serve as vice chair. I think I've made my point, and I know that I'll have another opportunity. And once we get this new process in place under the leadership of Mayor Chop and Councillor Van Passen, we'll have an opportunity to see how this standing committee is going to work for the budgets. And I know that I'll have another opportunity down the road if I so choose, and if you are willing to have me. So I'm willing to rescind the seat in light of that information, and I'll look forward to this upcoming budget process and know that that is an option down the road for all of us.
Thank you, Councillor Rabbits.
Thank you,
Councillor
Madam Mayor. And I just want to, just as a general comment, I am delighted that we have so many people who want to take on this responsibility. I know not all committees operate this way, so thank you.
Okay. So I guess.
You're unopposed.
I'm unopposed. Okay.
So that'll work.
Okay. So, I have a motion now prepared that staff report CAO 19-23 be received as information, and that the calendar be amended through not holding a meeting on March break and shifting meeting dates, and further that Councillor Van Passen be appointed as chair, and myself as vice chair, and further that the amending bylaw be approved. A mover and a seconder. Counselor Rabbit, seconded by Counselor Martin. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, so now we are on to the BIA. And we have a unique situation where we have had 2 ties for Counselor Rabbits, yes?
Apologies, sir. Did we get the calendar approved?
Yeah,
Okay.
as amended. And Andy, how many votes were there again that were cast?
There were 49 ballots cast in the election.
Okay. So despite all the enthusiasm that was out there, we were a little bit surprised on the low number of votes, again, that people went and cast. But the word on the street was, I think, that people were engaged and looking forward to it and so on. But we found ourselves now in a place where, unlike previous BIAs that didn't have enough people applying, we've had so many that we've held elections. And in this case, we've had 2 tie votes. Unfortunately, for the last tie, that means that we only have 8 spots on the BIA, but 9 people that have essentially come up with the same number of votes. So we've had some discussions of how to sort of get around that. The BIA, of course, has 8 civilian members and the 2 council members, which would result in potentially a regular tie vote at their meetings. And so, Councillor Taylor, I think you had a motion that you discussed you wanted to make.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. As this bylaw will be coming back next week, the BIA bylaw, that's correct, to increase the membership of civilian members to 9 to accommodate all of the tied votes and avoid tied votes in the BIA. I'd like to put that on the floor.
Councillor Rabbits.
Thank you, Mayor Chop, and through you, I would like to second that motion. I would also like to request that the vote tally be made public information. I think those that campaigned, and we've already let it be known that 49 individuals did cast a ballot in this electoral process. I think it's in the best interest of transparency and accountability to provide those that, again, campaigned and ran and were successful, and those that were not, the vote tally that they received. I think that's appropriate.
Okay, so would this be okay that the vote tally be publicly released, that the BIA bylaw be amended to reflect 1 additional member on the board for a total of 9 members plus the 2 members of council, and that Cam Carter, Jess Bomrito, David Fernandez Lopez, Suzanne Earls, Brian Jones, Joe Botcheller, Tiffany Neese, and Les Anderson, and Dustin Wakeford be appointed to the Simcoe BIA Board of Management for a term to coincide with the term of council or until such time as reappointments are made. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Huffman, and seconded by Councillor Taylor. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Okay, next we have that the minutes of the council and committee meeting of June 18th, 2019 be approved with the exception of items 11, 15, and closed session discussion item 12A that are pulled for further discussion. That motion's been moved by Councillor Guys and seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? Okay. Correct. Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to move that resolution number 6 of the CIC minutes be referred to staff for further information.
I believe you were going to have to move for a deferral for further. Did we decide on the 2/3 majority with this case? Could you just clarify what the additional information is that you would like to see?
Formal report of what we received as information today from Involve, but provided by staff, with those motions and options as something we can consider.
Okay.
For next week.
For the following council meeting?
Yeah, council.
For the following council meeting, not the July 2nd, the 9th.
For CIC? Yeah.
Oh, you're bringing it to
Okay,
CIC.
CIC.
Okay.
Yeah.
Counselor Van Passen?
July 7th.
Are we just amending the recommendation that it be brought back to the next CIC and we delete the fall of 2019? Is that really what we're doing?
Perfect. Okay, seconder for the deferral, Counselor Ravitz. All those in favor? That's carried. So let's just take the vote again in that case. So that was item 6, that the minutes of Council and Committee meeting of June 18th be approved, the exception of items 6, 11, 15, and the closed session discussion 12A. All those in favor? Carried. Sorry, I was just going off the motions here. Okay, so approval of minutes from council meeting of June 11th, 2019. Are there any errors or omissions from council? Seeing none. Councilor Michelle, you're looking, okay. All right, so now we're moving on to, I just want to clarify, Andy, then, so I don't make a mistake here. We're now moving on to item 11. The next, okay. So item 11 from Council and Committee, June 18th, 2019, and that's in respect to Public Works 19-39. I was the one that pulled this motion, so just to speak to it, didn't I put, oh, is that Friday the 13th? Sorry. Councilor Martin, tired.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Probably because if I didn't, you would have. This
it's-
report was pulled after our staff actually reached out to me, which I greatly appreciate. There's a lot of feedback from the public on these changes, and I would like to pass it over to Mr. Cridlin for him to fill the rest of council in.
Thank you. Through the Mayor to County Council. Yes, we had heard a lot of feedback, and I imagine you had, or I know Councillor Martin had, about our proposal putting the bike parking north of Nelson Street on Main. A lot of the groups thought, you know, it's going to harm the event. We need to get them closer to the downtown. So when staff went through, we did look at the amount of vendors. Although we don't know the amount of vendors coming, we know historically we feel that we have enough vendors on Main Street. However, Nelson Street West is so crucial for emergency management staff to keep open for our fire and EMS. So we looked at this in reverse, and what we were prepared to offer is to have bikes park from Park Street on Main Street down to Clinton. Now, it is only a half block. It's not a complete block. Again, it's not ideal, but as we move forward with this event, and we did not want to risk risk losing all of our changes, because we think we know a lot of these changes are going to make this a safer event. So what staff had talked to the ward councillor about was allowing bike parking basically from Park Street to Clinton, and that is the change that we're offering. I think it will bring bikes to the downtown area. It's a bit of a compromise maybe. We still keep Nelson Street open. We have the accessible barriers and everything, but we do open up a small section of Main Street for bikes that are closer to the downtown event.
Thanks, Phil. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Additionally, I was able to speak with both the Board of Trade and the Kinsmen. They are made aware of these suggested changes. They're okay with them as far as vendor space goes. They too think that they still will have enough room. And I think we'll be able to meet some of the public in the middle and try to make some subtle changes that make staff and public safety a bigger priority, but keep the culture of the event alive and well in Port Dover. So thank you. Thank you to your team, your staff, especially Sarah and Gord.
Okay, any further questions from councillors? I just want to clarify, so is the language in this new motion is correct then? I'll read it in its entirety, but and further that once total vendor numbers are in place, staff can make determinations on whether bike parking can be moved closer to Chapman? Is that?
No, I believe we're going to create a new motion entirely that will adopt the former suggestions on road closures with the exception of allowing bike parking on Main Street from Park Street to Clinton Street. All other changes in the former report will stand.
Sorry, Councilor Martin. Bike parking from,
On Main Street from Park to Clinton.
On Main from Park to Clinton. Okay, so if we're ready, that Public Works Report 19-39, parking plans for public safety Friday the 13th be received as information, and that Norfolk County Council direct staff to proceed with implementing the alterations to the Friday the 13th event organization and layout as described in Public Works 19-39, with the exception of allowing bike parking from Park Street to Clinton. And further, that no changes to off-season events be made at this time, and further that Norfolk County Council repeal bylaw 2018-75, and further that staff be directed to prepare and present a bylaw for approval to enact the temporary road closures and parking restrictions for Friday the 13th festivities as outlined in staff report PW 19-39. Okay, mover, Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, the next item then was item 15, Council and Committee, June 18th. And I guess, Jason, you had a couple words first.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Chop. Through you to the rest of council, I believe one of the major reasons we're rediscussing this report this evening is because last week I do believe I misspoke and gave everyone the impression that, myself included, that the $500,000 budget amendment included in this report was a result of the extension of East Street alone. That is not correct. In reality, the $500,000 increase is over the whole scope of the project. It's compiled of two major drivers outside of East Street. One being the increased cost of water main installation, the other being that when this project was originally budgeted for, and that budget was approved, it was done in basically two phases. Through the process of phase one, we did find that when we were originally proposing just a standard water main replacement, that we did a pretty terrible job of ripping up the road as well. So when this tender went out, the idea is to also resurface the entire roadway within the Lynn Park area. So that being said, that is a major component of that. And in actuality, the completion of East Street is, you were provided a map on your blotter there. You can see where we've got the two dead ends on East Street North and East Street South. It is approximately 70 meters of road extension that staff are proposing to be included in this. That comes to a tune of approximately $100,000 related to this, the proposal of extending East Street through. So just wanted to give you that clarification, and I am willing to answer any further questions you may have about that.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Through you to Mr. Godby. So when you say we did a terrible job at ripping up the road, was that us? Are we the we?
Through the mayor to Councillor Martin. I guess when I say we, I mean the proverbial we as in the construction activity. Basically, it's a result of just older road base, and we did more damage in order to install the new water main that was originally anticipated.
One more, Mayor Chop. Last week when we spoke about how was I going to be able to justify sending new road and construction crews into this neighborhood when we had a lot of unfinished business, that was part one of what I was talking about the road and whatnot in there, so I'm happy to hear that that's now included. The only other thing I believe I asked for maybe a little bit more information on when we passed this motion originally was a follow-up to some grading concerns on curbs and sidewalks in and around that same area. If that information can still make its way back, we can just remove the Lynn Street section. Thank you.
Through the mayor to Councillor Martin, I did follow up with our engineering staff. They are aware and are working with the contractor to get those issues addressed.
Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jason, I noticed on the map here, there's 3 lots on the west side of this road that's been closed. So they're owned by the original developer? Is that who owns them? And would they be asked for any dollars to contribute to this project, being that it would give them access to the highway, which they could then sell those lots?
If I could just interject with one piece there, in terms of the ownership of the lots, I did some kind of research into that, and they actually were just sold less than 2 months ago, which is interesting. So I'm just wondering if you could maybe touch on that cost for that piece, that extension over those 3 lots.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to all of council. There are those 3 lots there. I did also look into this. They are currently held by 2 different property owners. I cannot obviously get into who exactly. I can say that in consultation with our building division and our environmental services division, there is one of them who is actively pursuing the idea of building on one of these lots, and they understand that there are financial contributions that would be required, whether we were to require them to bear all that cost on their own in order to extend the road and extend the sanitary sewer and provide water service to the lot. Whereas if we, basically using our economy of scale, do this now, when that infrastructure is installed, staff would recommend in putting a 1-foot reserve across the frontage of all 3 of those lots, which would then be passed by bylaw, whereby they would pay approximately 1/3 of that $100,000 in order to recover some of the costs that are directly attributed to providing that additional service for these lots.
So that total amount is $100,000, is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the cost that I'm looking for is approximately, rounded, it's $100,000.
For the 3 lots?
Through you, for the, basically, on your map, when you see those 2 pieces of roadway, with the grass in between, if you were to connect those, that is the cost, $100,000 to complete that piece of road work, along with sanitary sewer.
I have to say this, I can't stay quiet about this sentence here. It says in the report from last week that, and I quote in the 3rd paragraph, "At the request of the property owners, servicing the adjacent lots was added to the scope of work." So at a simple request, $100,000, had we not questioned this, was just going to be added to the scope of work because 3 property, or 1 or 2, I suppose, because it's 2 property owners that purchased the 3 lots, came to the county and said, we would just like this extended, when we know in every other area in Delhi we've seen that these property owners have been responsible for this on their own in the past. It troubles me even more to learn that the lots were just literally sold the beginning of May. And so it's sometime between the beginning of May and they found out that county was looking at extending this stretch of road. So I don't know. I think for me, in order to approve this job, I need some sort of assurance in the motion itself that that will all be recouped. Is there an intention for the other 2 builder or the other owner of the other lots to build on those lots sometime soon? And are they willing to commit to that amount of money? Otherwise, should the one developer that you're speaking about that's willing to foot the 3rd, do you know which lot he has? Is it the middle lot or is it on the end lot?
One of the 2 fringe.
It's one of the 2 end lots? So for myself, I would be willing to build it to that point unless we got a commitment right now from the owner of the other 2 lots to also equally commit to that amount of money.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to all of council, the decision to push this road through is not only supported by staff in order to prevent the piecemealing of this infrastructure, like to build roads. It's not to have to extend the sanitary sewer, 30 meters at a time as people want to possibly build or not build in this area. But one of the major drivers for us is also related to ingress and egress of the area. When we have emergency vehicles or snow plows or anything going down in there, right now we are looking at a significant amount of backing up required in order to get back out of the site, whether that is our weekly garbage recycling collection, whether that is snow plowing when it is done. We have these concerns that could be addressed at this time for what we believe to be a very good price because of all the other construction work that we are doing in the area. We're not going in just to address East Street or East Street infrastructure. It is part of the overall development, that the Lynn Park development, that we're trying to eliminate some of these concerns. All of that being said, should council choose to not complete those road upgrades and those other servicing extensions, staff can deal with that, and we will address that with our contractor. At the end of the day, we do believe it provides an overall benefit. We can establish a 1-foot reserve across those lots, which is essentially would be a bylaw stating that they need to pay us X amount of dollars in order to have that lifted so that they could actually get a building permit for that lot. And that would remain on the title of, or that would remain as an encumbrance against the property until such a time that it is paid, whether that be now or whether that be 10 years from now. But it would help us address our other concerns.
Okay, again, though, if those were the reasons of extending the road for snow plows or for what, I mean, it has been that way since the beginning of time. And if those were the reasons, why did that not come forward in the report? What came forward in the report was strictly that because you did so at the request of the property owners. And as a mayor, I would be sort of shirking my duty right now if I didn't say that there's something about that doesn't seem right to me, that the property's literally transferred, hadn't been sold in 20-some years, and then a couple months ago, they transferred hands. And now, if I hadn't pulled this item, we were going to go and service those lots for nothing. And yet, in other areas of the county, people have had to pay to have their lots serviced in the same manner. Councillor Van Passen and then Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, because I thought we had directed staff to do that we were going to charge it as a local improvement and put a price tag on it. And, it is pretty standard practice to do that. The 1-foot reserve takes away their access to an open municipal road, so they can't build on it until the bill is paid. All we're doing is fronting the money. Finishing off that road is only about 40 years overdue in here, as I can figure, from the first houses at both ends, and we never got around to doing it. It is the cheapest time to do it. I would take the staff's recommendation. We do the bylaw, register the 1-foot reserve across those properties with a price tag of to be determined, but 1/3 of the extra 100,000 to pave it, and just get the job done, and we'll get the money back. As soon as they want to build on there, they got to pay that money before they can get a building permit. So it's not like it's ever going to go away. It might be next week, and it might be in a couple of years, but we'll get it back. So
Just to be clear, that wasn't the motion that was made last week, though.
I know, but I know we discussed it.
We discussed it, but it wasn't made,
I'm glad
it wasn't
you pulled it, 'cause
clear.
I missed it myself.
And Councillor Columbus.
Mayor Chop, the 1-foot reserve passed by bylaw will address your concerns. We'll get our money back before they can get a building permit, right? Thank you.
Okay, so Do you have some wording, Jason, that makes it easier for you? First, I have that staff report PW 1938 award of contract for PWE 19-66 Lynn Park Water Main Phase 2 Port Dover be received as information, and that bylaw be prepared authorizing the mayor and county clerk to execute a contract with the firm of Elgin Construction Company Limited for contract PWE 19-66 in the amount of $1,310,426 net of HST. And further that, help me with this last language here that you would like, that a 1 foot encumbrance.
Through you, Mayor Chop, I guess I would suggest something along the lines of, and further that staff be directed to prepare a bylaw for the establishment of a 1 foot reserve across, well, we would need the legal descriptions of the properties to, if you really wanted
For a
to-
1 foot reserve across lots
The
49,
frontages.
48, 49, and 50 on East Street.
Yeah, and I mean, we can get the exact legal descriptions to the clerk for inclusion in the bylaw, just to
Okay.
tighten it up so it's very clear as to which exactly 3 properties we're talking about.
Okay.
Um,
And
So
that the cost of the extension over lots 48, 49, and 50 be presented to council in the bylaw.
yes, that would work, because then we could have all the necessary data in the actual bylaw when it's passed, which would kind of include the exact costs associated for the removal
Those 3
of
lots.
that 1 foot reserve in each lot.
Okay, thanks. And further, that the 2019 capital budget be amended as outlined within report PW 19-38. Mover is, well, Councillor Taylor, are you still comfortable? And Councillor Geisens? Any further discussion? All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, and next, I guess it's over to you, Jason, for the staff report PW 19-34.
Okay. Through you, Madam Mayor, to council. In front of you is staff report PW 1934. It's award of contract for cold-in-place recycling. Essentially, this is the process whereby we go by, mill up the old road, remix it with some new material, put it down, and then we top coat the whole thing with about 2 inches of new asphalt. You will notice on page 293 of the agenda, the attachment that is kind of showing our 2 work areas. That is Highway 24 south from Simcoe and then heading west towards Turkey Point Road. This project would also include 1.5 meters of paved shoulder wherever possible along this route, as well as the Norfolk County-owned portion of the Indian Line in the northeast corner of the county. You will notice that this project has come in within budget. It will also include a few municipal drainage crossings. And if you have any other specific questions, I would be glad to answer.
Okay, any questions of councilors? Okay, motion moved by Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Martin. I lied. Moved by Councillor Columbus and seconded by Councillor Taylor that staff report PW 19-34 award of contract for PWE 19-30 cold in place recycling be received as information, and that a bylaw be prepared authorizing the mayor and county clerk to execute a contract with the firm of Coco Paving Incorporated for contract PW 19-30 in the amount of $4,711,264.23 out of HST, and further that the approved 2019 capital budget be amended as outlined within PW Report PW 19-34. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, moving on to the bylaws. Motion moved by Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Martin, that bylaw 2019-29, bylaw 2019-61 to bylaw 2019-65, inclusive, and bylaw 44Z 2019 to bylaw 46Z 2019 inclusive, be approved, signed by the mayor and clerk, and affixed with the corporate seal. All those in favor? And that's carried. And now, after bylaw, I believe we're over to you, Councillor Taylor, with your motion for reconsideration.
May I speak to it now, or should we get a seconder first?
You can speak to it first, that's fine.
I know over the last few weeks you would have all received communications from a concerned group of business owners in Simcoe and around Norfolk regarding the tax increment grant policy going back to January. They would like an opportunity to speak to it regarding concerns they have and issues that have come up with it over the last month as they've done their research more and more into it. And I'm just looking to be able to accommodate for that for them by bringing this back for reconsideration to allow that opportunity for them to speak. So I'm just hoping I can get a seconder and we might go to a bit more discussion.
I think you have one already. Councillor Columbus is on there. Okay, any discussion? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Through you, I guess, to Councillor Taylor. Can we not just have the group back to speak on the grant in general without doing a reconsideration?
It was one of those, should have pulled it, a little bit of a procedural hiccup, and then they had their deputation denied, so this was the next step that was provided to me. Yeah, so now we're looking to bring it back and see what can be done.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. Maybe I should redirect that to Andy. I understand speaking specifically to a specific tax increment, but what if we received a deputation from a group who wanted to come and speak to this grant that we have in general and what they would like to see our council do with it or not do with it?
Through you, Mayor Chop, I guess it's similar to what I kind of said before, is that if we get deputation requests and I deny them, council can always, or committee can always waive two-thirds rule to hear them out. This group specifically, when they inquired, wanted to talk about this specific issue and wanted council to revisit this decision. That was some time ago. That was the process takes a couple weeks, so that's not recent information, though.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. So I am trying to accommodate that. They do want to see this up for reconsideration at this point, so I am trying to accommodate that aspect of it as well, and hopefully I can get some support behind that.
Okay, any further discussion? In that case, can I ask for a recorded vote, please?
This has to be two-thirds. Councillor Geisens. Councillor Rabbits.
Yes.
Councillor Columbus. Councillor Martin.
No.
Councillor Van Passen. No. Councillor Huffman.
No.
Councillor Michele.
No.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes.
Mayor Chop.
No.
The motion's defeated.
Okay. That said, I would like them to come back and make a presentation, and I think council would be fully supportive of hearing them, of how we can make, I've had a conversation with one of the individuals, and I think they do have some great ideas for how we can change things in the future to make it better. My concern with this was just, this would be 5 council meetings spent on one issue, and at some point, we're going to make mistakes, and we have to move on, and otherwise we're never going to get to the bigger issues that we need to deal with. So I do hope they come, and I'm sure they will have the support of council once we get that set up to hear them out. Okay, so now I guess let's do our, is it okay if I call it announcements? Oh, I guess other business? Councillor Taylor, we can keep it the same way.
Oh, I do have an announcement this time. I'm happy to say it. I'd like to congratulate all the members of the BIA. Can't wait to get started, and really looking forward to it, guys.
Thank you, that's a great one. Councillor Shelley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the weekend, the Long Point Lions Club had held their annual and I don't know the exact figures, but I was told by the organizers that they raised a considerable amount of money for local charities.
Councillor Hoffman. Councillor Van Passen.
Nothing this evening, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. 2 very quick things. I'm excited to attend a webinar, you don't have to go very far, tomorrow on tiny homes, so expect an update, my fellow colleagues. And additionally, July 1st festivities in Port Dover, so I hope you can all come to Port Dover. And there are boat races in the morning, soapbox derbies, we've got dog shows, fireworks, live music by the Lions, so come to Port Dover.
Councillor Columbus.
2 quick items. I noticed in the information package, the town of Halton Hills passed a motion regarding the OGRA and Roma conferences, that they be combined conferences. They're a few weeks apart, and they used to be together at one time. And I just wonder, what would the process be if we wish to endorse the town of Halton Hills motion that's spelled out in this information package? Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mayor Chop. So with any resolution or anything in the full pack, all you need to do is tell me, and we'll put it on the next council agenda for approval.
Can we do that then?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Consider it done.
And secondly, there was a property in Delhi that was advertised for non-payment of taxes. It's the Delhi Solak property. It's zoned industrial. There's said to be an environmental order on it. There were no bidders for it in the advertisement. And Mr. Johnson, I've been asked today, is there an opportunity to put this property up for auction? There's somebody interested in it, and they said the fairest way, being it has an environmental order on it, and I think there's $400,000 in taxes owing, that would be to put it up for auction. Your comments, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Columbus. So I believe that was the first tax sale for that particular property. So the county has the option to put it up for sale again. So we have 2 kicks at the can. And then if the second one fails, then the county has the option to vest the property. So there's a procedure involved with that. And once we vest the property, then we can put it up as surplus and then sell it. However, in doing that, we would have to write off the taxes that are owing, so that you have to keep that in mind.
Councillor Rabbits.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I just want to wish everyone a happy Canada Day long weekend. I want to encourage everyone, if they are partaking in food and drink, and to drink responsibly. Friends don't let friends drive drunk. And I also want to point out that a lot of fireworks will be set off, and there's going to be a lot of celebration. And if you can't be safe, I encourage you to be careful and look out for each other. Thank you.
Councillor Geisens. Anyone from staff? Okay. Nothing from me either this evening. I guess we're going to be moving into closed session. Oh boy. That council proceed into closed session at 11:04 p.m. pursuant to sections 239B and D of the Municipal Act 2001 as the subject matter pertains to personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal and local board employees and labor relations and employee negotiations. Mover and a seconder. Counselor Rabbit, seconded by Counselor Geisens. All in favor? Carried. A motion that council reconvene in open session at 6 minutes after midnight. Council